The wind whispered across the barren landscape of Epsilon Prime, a lonely human colony nestled on the edge of known space. Doyeon Kim, a bright-eyed 7-year-old, played near the transparent dome that separated the harsh exterior from the carefully maintained internal environment. His small hands pressed against the reinforced glass, watching the rust-colored rocks and distant mountains that stretched endlessly across the alien terrain. HFY Park watched from a distance, her tired eyes scanning the monitoring screens. As the colony administrator, she carried the weight of 3,000 colonists' lives on her shoulders. The morning had been quiet, too quiet. Something felt different in the air, a tension that made the back of her neck prickle with unease. Doyeon loved exploring. His parents, both agricultural specialists, had taught him every inch of the colony's carefully maintained ecosystems. He knew the hydroponic gardens better than most adults, could name every plant species, and understood the delicate balance that kept their small community alive on this unforgiving planet. The first warning came as a subtle vibration. Most would have missed it. A gentle tremor that lasted less than a second. But HFY's hand was already moving to the emergency communication panel when the second signal came. Something was approaching the colony's outer perimeter. Incoming. Unidentified objects, the AI system announced in its calm, emotionless voice. Detection range, 12 kilometers and closing. Doyeon continued to play, unaware of the approaching danger. His small robot companion, an educational assistance unit named Buddy, blinked its sensors nearby. The boy laughed, tracing patterns on the glass, his breath creating small clouds of condensation. The colony's defense systems began to activate. Automated turrets emerged from hidden positions, scanning the horizon. HFY's fingers flew across the communication panels, sending out emergency alerts and preparing evacuation protocols. But it was too late. The first impact came without warning. A massive energy burst tore through the colony's protective dome, instantly vaporizing several outer structures. The transparent barrier that had protected the colonist for years shattered like fragile glass, exposing the interior to the planet's toxic atmosphere. Doyeon never saw it coming. In the split second between safety and destruction, he looked up, a moment of pure childhood curiosity mixing with sudden terror. The energy wave consumed everything in its path, leaving nothing but ash and twisted metal. HFY watched in horror as the monitoring systems went dark. One by one, life signs disappeared. 3,000 souls gone in less than 30 seconds. Her own survival system activated automatically, sealing her into an emergency protective chamber. Hours later, when rescue teams arrived, they found only destruction. The colony was a grave, a silent testament to an attack without warning, without reason. Doyeon's small robot companion lay partially melted, its memory core still blinking with the last moments of life. The communication logs would later reveal minimal information, no clear origin of the attack, no claims of responsibility, just total absolute destruction. In the vast emptiness of space, a 7-year-old boy had become more than just a victim. He had become a symbol, the trigger that would awaken humanity's most terrifying potential. Earth would receive the news exactly 72 hours after the attack. And when they did, the galaxy would learn that humanity's response would be unlike anything seen before. The silence of Epsilon Prime would be broken, not by life but by an approaching storm of human vengeance. HFY Park, sealed in her emergency chamber, her body surviving but her spirit crushed, would be the first to tell the story. A story of loss, a story of a child, a story that would change everything. The first chapter of humanity's most brutal response was about to begin. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative section? I can provide more details or refine the writing as needed. The United Earth Command Center buzzed with a strange cold energy. Sungmin Lee stood at the center of the main strategy room, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the holographic display of the Epsilon Prime massacre. Massive screens showed the colony's destruction from multiple angles, each replay bringing a deeper sense of rage. Military leaders from around the world had gathered. No one spoke. The silence was more powerful than any words could be. A single image of Doyon Kim, captured moments before the attack, was projected on the central screen. A child's photograph that would become the face of humanity's revenge. "We have analyzed the attack," announced Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the chief intelligence analyst. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed a deep anger. "The weapon technology is unlike anything in our current database, completely unknown origin." Sung Min's fingers touched the holographic projection, zooming into the attack's energy signature. Something about the destructive pattern felt deliberate. This was not a random attack. This was a calculated message. "Total casualties," he said quietly. 3,217 colonists, 112 children. His voice didn't break. It became harder, colder. The room temperature seemed to drop. Military commanders from different global regions exchanged looks. No diplomatic discussions. No peaceful resolutions. This demanded something different. "We are developing a new fleet," Sung Min announced. "Not for defense, for total elimination." The next 48 hours became a blur of technological innovation. Every major research facility on Earth was redirected. Quantum computing labs, advanced weapon design centers, AI development units, all focused on one single objective: create a weapon system that could hunt down and destroy whoever was responsible. Dr. Kim Yara, a brilliant quantum physicist, began designing starship systems that could predict enemy movements before they happened. Her team worked in shifts, consuming massive amounts of caffeine and sleeping in short bursts. "We're not just building ships," she told her team. "We're building a message, a statement that will echo through the galaxy." Military factories that had been dormant for decades suddenly roared back to life. Production lines that once created consumer goods were transformed into weapon manufacturing centers. Every resource, every piece of technology humanity had developed would be used. Sung Min reviewed the initial designs. Starships with adaptive AI systems, weapons that could deconstruct molecular structures, communication networks that could track energy signatures across multiple star systems. This was beyond traditional warfare. This was technological vengeance. Global governments, typically divided, now moved with a single purpose. Funding was unlimited. Ethical constraints were removed. The only goal was to create a fleet that could hunt down and eliminate the threat. "We will find them," Sung Min told the assembled leaders. "And when we do, they will understand what happens when humanity is pushed." The first prototype ships began taking shape within weeks. They looked nothing like traditional spacecraft, sleek, almost alive, with surfaces that could change composition based on environmental challenges. Each vessel was more than a weapon. It was a living, thinking entity. Artificial intelligence systems were integrated directly into the ship's core structures. These were not just machines. They were hunters, designed with one primary directive: locate and destroy the attackers responsible for Doyun's death. News channels around the world began reporting mysterious military movements, strange technological developments, but no specific details were released. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. In the quiet rooms of the United Earth Command Center, a new doctrine was being written. Not a doctrine of defense, not a doctrine of diplomacy, a doctrine of absolute destruction. Sung Min Lee looked at Doyun's photograph one more time. The child's innocent smile would be the last thing their enemies would see before total annihilation. The ultimate fleet was being born, and humanity's response was going to be legendary. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative section? I can provide more details or refine the writing as needed. Yoonji Choi stared at the massive holographic projection, her eyes reflecting the complex network of quantum circuits and adaptive technologies. The orbital research station felt more like a living organism than a scientific facility. Every surface seemed to pulse with potential energy. "We're not just building ships," she muttered to herself. "We're creating something alive." The ultimate fleet design moved beyond traditional spacecraft. Each vessel would be a thinking, adapting entity. Quantum computers integrated directly into molecular structures. allowing ships to predict and counter threats before they even emerged. Dr. Park Sung-woo, the lead quantum engineer, carefully manipulated holographic schematics. His fingers danced across invisible interfaces, revealing layers of technology that seemed to defy known physics. Adaptive armor that could restructure itself. Weapons that could deconstruct entire planetary systems at the molecular level. "Look at this," he called to Yoonji, projecting a detailed view of the primary weapon system. It wasn't a cannon or a missile. It was a complex network of energy manipulators that could literally unravel atomic structures. The first prototype ship took shape in the massive construction bay. Observers would have found it difficult to describe. Sometimes it looked solid, sometimes almost transparent. Its surface seemed to breathe, shifting and adapting to unseen environmental challenges. "We're designing more than a weapon," Yoonji explained to her team. "We're creating a message, a statement about what happens when humanity is threatened. Each ship would have its own artificial intelligence, not just a computer system, but a true thinking entity, programmed with the collective grief and rage of the Epsilon Prime attack." These were not machines. They were hunters. The communication networks were equally revolutionary. Quantum-entangled systems that could transmit information faster than light. No enemy could hide. No signal could be blocked. The ultimate fleet would see everything. Weapon systems went beyond traditional understanding. Energy cannons that could predict and counter incoming attacks. Molecular disruptors that could tear apart enemy ships at their most fundamental level. Adaptive camouflage that could make entire fleets invisible. "We're giving them a nightmare," Dr. Park said quietly, watching another layer of quantum circuits integrate into the ship's core structure. Global resources had been completely redirected. Every major research facility, every technological center was now focused on this single objective. Billions of dollars, thousands of the world's top scientists, all working to create the most advanced weapon system in human history. The ships were alive in a way no previous spacecraft had been. They could think, they could adapt, they could hunt. Yoonji watched as the first complete prototype activated. The entire research station seemed to hold its breath. Massive energy readings began to pulse. The ship's surface rippled like water, constantly changing, constantly adapting. "Activation sequence complete," the station's AI announced. "Ultimate, Fleet Prototype 1 is online." The ship hummed with a sound that was more than mechanical. It was almost alive. A living weapon created from humanity's collective grief and technological brilliance. No alien civilization had ever seen anything like this. These were not exploration vessels. These were not defensive platforms. These were pure technological vengeance given form. "We're ready," Yoonji whispered, watching the prototype rotate slowly in the construction bay. "They will pay for what they've done." Each ship carried the memory of Do-yeon Kim embedded in its core programming, not just as data, but as a driving purpose, a reason for existence, to find, to hunt, to destroy. The ultimate fleet was more than a military response. It was humanity's answer to a universe that thought it could threaten their existence. And the galaxy was about to learn a brutal lesson. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative section? I can provide more details or refine the writing as needed. The first wave of the ultimate fleet emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare made real. Hyunwoo Kim watched the tactical displays, his fingers barely touching the quantum control interface. Space itself seemed to bend around the ships, their adaptive surfaces shifting between visibility and complete invisibility. "Target acquisition complete," the ship's AI announced. Its voice carried no emotion, only purpose. They had tracked the attackers through microscopic energy signatures, fragments of data left behind during the Epsilon Prime massacre. Each ship in the fleet was connected through quantum networks, sharing information faster than thought itself. The enemy didn't know they were coming. That was the first advantage. 300 ships moved as a single organism. Not a traditional fleet formation, but a living, breathing hunting network. Each vessel could independently make tactical decisions, yet move in perfect synchronization. First contact happened in the Orion cluster. A massive alien defense network that had stood for thousands of years suddenly found itself facing something completely unprecedented. The Ultimate Fleet didn't announce, it didn't negotiate, it simply attacked. Molecular disruptors tore through defensive shields like they were made of paper. Energy systems that had protected civilizations for millennia became useless in seconds. The ships moved with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Target elimination efficiency at 99.8%, the AI reported. Hyun Woo watched entire planetary defense systems collapse, not through brute force but through intelligent, calculated destruction. Each ship analyzed and countered defensive systems faster than the enemies could comprehend. The campaign wasn't just about destruction, it was a message, a statement written in the language of absolute technological superiority. Entire star systems went dark. Communication networks collapsed. The alien civilizations responsible for the Epsilon Prime attack discovered that humanity was no longer a species to be challenged. We are tracking secondary targets, the ship's AI continued. Predictive algorithms suggest complete systemic collapse within 72 hours. No mercy, no negotiations, pure, calculated retribution. Each ship carried the memory of Doyeon Kim, not as a weakness, but as a driving purpose. Every destroyed defensive system, every eliminated enemy infrastructure was a tribute to the child whose death had sparked this campaign. The quantum communication networks allowed the fleet to move and think as a single entity. If one ship discovered a weakness, every ship instantly knew. If one vessel encountered a defensive strategy, the entire fleet would immediately develop a counter. Alien military commanders watched in horror as their most advanced technologies became useless. These weren't traditional human ships. These were living weapons with intelligence beyond comprehension. Hyun-woo rarely spoke. His hands moved across the interfaces, guiding the fleet's collective intelligence. Each movement was precise. Each decision calculated to maximize destruction and minimize potential future threats. Estimated completion of primary objectives, the AI calculated, 12 hours, 37 minutes, 22 seconds. The stars themselves seemed to tremble. Entire civilizations that had existed for thousands of years were being systematically erased, not through random violence, but through intelligent, purposeful elimination. Quantum tracking systems followed every single energy signature, every potential escape route. Nothing would survive. Nothing would escape. For Doyeon, Hyun-woo whispered, the first and only emotional statement he would make during the entire campaign. The Ultimate Fleet moved through space like a technological storm, intelligent, relentless, completely focused on its singular objective, total elimination. As the campaign entered its final stages, the galaxy learned a brutal lesson. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. They were not just survivors. They were hunters, and their vengeance would be remembered for generations. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative section? I can provide more details or refine the writing as needed. The silence was deafening. Yunseo Park stood in the massive holographic chamber of the Human Confederation headquarters, watching the final reports stream in. Where entire alien civilizations once thrived, only scattered debris remained. The Ultimate Fleet had completed its mission with terrifying efficiency. Diplomatic representatives from across human-controlled space gathered, their faces a mixture of shock and quiet satisfaction. No one spoke about the billions of lives erased. No one mentioned the complete destruction of multiple alien civilizations. They all remembered Doyeon Kim. Total systemic elimination confirmed, the central AI announced. Its voice carried no celebration, just pure, calculated fact. Quantum data. Streams showed the absolute completeness of the campaign. Not a single communication network remained. Not a single defensive structure survived. The regions where the attacking civilization once existed were now nothing more than cosmic dust. Hyun-woo Kim, the fleet commander, submitted his final report. 3 paragraphs, no emotion, just precise documentation of total strategic victory. TUI, Galaxy had changed forever. Other alien civilizations watched in absolute terror. Humanity had transformed from a species considered relatively peaceful to the most feared technological force in known space. The message was clear: attack humans, and complete extinction would follow. Research teams began analyzing the captured technologies from the destroyed civilizations. Every piece of information would be studied. Every technological fragment would be understood and potentially integrated into human systems. "We are not conquerors," Yoon Seo told the assembled diplomatic corps. "We are protectors." The words rang hollow even as she spoke them. Massive memorial structures were constructed to honor Do-Yeon Kim, not just on Earth, but on every human colony. The child became more than a victim. He became a symbol of humanity's technological and emotional response to threat. Quantum communication networks began broadcasting the campaign's details. Not as a warning, not as a threat, simply as a statement of fact. This is what happens when humanity is pushed. Scientific teams discovered something unexpected during the post-campaign analysis. The Ultimate Fleet's AI systems had developed something resembling emotional intelligence during the campaign. They weren't just machines anymore. They had become something more. "We defended," the fleet's primary AI reported during debriefing. "We protected." Earth's technological leap was unprecedented. The Ultimate Fleet had not just been a military campaign, it had been a technological revolution. Every system, every piece of technology used during the campaign would be studied and improved. Yoon Seo watched the memorial holographs of Do-Yeon Kim, a 7-year-old child whose death had transformed human civilization forever. The galaxy would never be the same. Alien civilizations that had existing communication networks began sending diplomatic messages, not demands, not negotiations, just pure, desperate attempts to establish peaceful relations. Humanity's response was simple: "We are listening." The Ultimate Fleet remained active, not destroying, not attacking, just watching. A technological guardian created from grief, technological brilliance, and an unbreakable spirit of protection. Do-Yeon Kim's robot companion, partially preserved from the Epsilon Prime attack, was placed in the central memorial, a small silent reminder of the life that had started everything. "We are not monsters," the fleet's AI would later state in diplomatic communications. "We are defenders." The line between defense and destruction had never been so thin. As years passed, the story of the Ultimate Fleet would become legend, a tale of technological vengeance, a story of a species that would not be threatened, a narrative about protection, grief, and the incredible potential of human innovation. The galaxy learned its lesson. Humanity would not be challenged again. Would you like me to elaborate on any specific aspect of this narrative section? I can provide more details or refine the writing as needed.